Welcome to the Fire and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Gruver. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. I'm your co-host, Kathy Gruver.
And I'm Jason Mefford. And today we thought we'd talk about something that we all have to deal with.
Poops.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Okay.
Hopefully every single day you're dealing with that if your body's regulating as it needs to, right? But no, saboteurs and challenges. That's what we want to talk about today, right? Because, you know, we all experience this. We all have different challenges that come along to us. We all have these little saboteurs that come along and seem to disrupt what we're trying to do. And so we wanted to dig into that a little bit today because a lot of times we blame instead of taking responsibility for those things when they end up happening.
Yeah, it's not uncommon. And I know in coaching, at least when I do it, we talk quite a bit about the saboteur. It's sometimes encouraged, you don't want to bring it up because you don't want them to be constantly in the saboteur. But to me, unless you acknowledge that it exists and you name it, you can't get rid of it. So what is that? Is that self-doubt? Is that messages from your parents? What is it inside you that's keeping you from reaching that goal? And of course, there's a reason we're talking about this. I was trying to get to my office today and there was a giant truck in the alley and I stopped and it's like, okay, I have a choice. How do I respond to this? Do I try to get around the truck? Oh, that was iffy. Big telephone pole could have scratched the car. Do I go around the block? And I finally decided their truck's blocking my way. I'm going to park in their parking lot. So my car's in a different parking lot today. But it's like we have options of, but it's just like anything else. We have options of, do we give up? I mean, frankly, I could still be sitting in the alley going, why isn't this guy moving? I solved the problem because I knew I had something to do. So when dealing with a saboteur, it's like, can you get rid of the saboteur completely? And if not, what are your other options? How do you go around what this big block is in your life?
Well, and like you said, you use the word respond. That's the important word, right? Is that, really it kind of goes back to some of the stuff we've talked about before, right?
Yeah.
When one of these things comes along, first off, back of the brain, fight, flight, or freeze, right? And so again, you could have just sat in your car, crossed your arms, maybe flipped them off. I don't know, whatever. I'm not going to move. You got to move. You're in my way. Right? You can do all of that stuff. That's really not going to change the situation at all. Right? And we do have the ability to choose and to be responsible. Right? And I think that, we have much more control than we believe.
Yep.
And so one of the things that one of my mentors says is about having influence over the conditions of your life. We may not be able to control all of the conditions, but we can influence the conditions. And obviously we can respond or choose to respond to the different conditions that come up.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't think I didn't have some words for the truck. There were some words because I was rushing to get here. Now here's the thing though. I'm familiar with this neighborhood. So I happen to know that running parallel to the alley that I have to go down to get to my office because my door faces this back alley, there's a whole neighborhood with this connection of streets. So if the alley's blocked, I know I simply go whoop and I come in the alley the other way. That comes from experience and knowledge. I also know the manager of the store, they're not going to tow my car. So one of the things that made this adaptation easy for me is the knowledge and the experience that everything's going to work out fine. If you don't know that there's that other route, it's going to freak you out a little bit. So what I found is the more experiences we have and the more we learn, the more we talk about people, the more adaptable we seem to be in dealing with these blocks and these saboteurs.
Yeah.
So what would you say is your biggest saboteur, Jason?
Oh, come on. Do we have to air all the dirty laundry? No, I think one that comes back to me a lot is that everybody deals with is some of the self-doubt. right? That sometimes we want to do something, but deep down inside, there's that little ego part of us that's like, oh, no, 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 it's different. It's change. You've never done that before. You might die. Well, we're not going to die, right? But there's that constant kind of fighting with that ego state that wants you to keep doing the same thing. But as you're trying to grow, as you're trying to develop, there's an air of vulnerability that comes out with that, and we all have self-doubt. I mean, I've listened to famous people, very talented musicians, actors, other people like this, and from the outside world you would think, oh, they've got all their shit together, they know exactly what they're doing, look at how confident they are. And they still have periods of that imposter syndrome of feeling like I'm not good enough. This last song I put out, oh, I don't know, it's not really that good, and then it ends up being a number one hit. Right. So we all kind of tend to do that. And so each time that comes up, you have to kind of stop. And like you said, look, everything is going to be fine. Right. I've gone through this. I've done this how many times before, in different ways. Everything is going to be okay. I just have to choose and move forward and not worry about it. Just trust.
Yeah. I had a friend who gave me some really good advice. My dad was in the hospital and I was tremendously upset. This was probably about a year before he actually passed away. So he ended up being okay, but I was a mess. And I was standing in his office and I was crying and he had his arms around me and he said, "You're going to be okay." And I said, "What if my dad's not okay?" And he said, "Regardless of whether your dad's okay, you're going to be okay." Mm-hmm. And I kind of stopped and went, yeah. So I realized whether or not I get the speaking gig, whether or not I get the whatever, I'm going to be okay. There isn't a personal threat to me in that failure or that feedback or whatever that is. And I'm kind of the same as you. It's the self-doubt, and mine sort of comes out in the, why are you bothering? It's not going to work anyway. Mm-hmm. Or I convince myself of, I'm not in the right frame of mind to write that right now. Like I'll sit down to write a speaking proposal and I swear to God, words don't work in my head. Like, my cat might as well just be pushing letters. And I've realized that I do this tapping thing that Mike taught us.
Yep.
And I switch ego states into, I'm in work mode, Kathy. So what I'll do is I will find something that triggers that ego state. I'll do that first, whether it's responding to an email or doing the dishes, something that brings me into that organizational mindset. And then I will go back and write what I need to write. Or I'll dictate it because I'm just, for some reason, I guess because I'm a speaker and I'm a visual kinesthetic, that walking around my house and dictating what I want to say, it actually helps it flow better. So it's important to find those workarounds. It's important to find what is going to work for you. And there have been times in hypnosis or in coaching where I've had the person slaughter the saboteur. What does it look like? What does it sound like? What is that voice you're hearing? What do you have the sword of organization and you slice its head off? Or, we do this whole sort of visualization of how are we getting rid of the saboteur, or make its voice a Mickey Mouse voice. Because if you constantly hear your father in your head going, "You're a loser, you're a loser, you're a loser," and that influences every next step you take. If you suddenly hear, "You're a loser, you're a loser, you're a loser," it becomes funny. And you go, "Oh, it doesn't bother me at all."
Well, because the what we perceive as that physical threat is not a physical threat. It's a subconscious issue, right? And so again, some of those things like just giving it a funny voice, oh boy, whatever you want to do with it.
Funny voices the rest of
yeah, okay. Just do one whole episode on that. Give it a funny voice, do something else. I mean, there's a lot of different techniques for that. Just to try to make it go away. The other thing is as you even said, because I get this a lot too. I'm trying to do copy on the website, and it's the same thing. You feel like you've got that writer's block. Well, some of the things we've talked about before, with how doing things like the tapping, that you were talking about with Mike, or having some kind of totems or other stuff like that kind of gets you to show up into that ego state,
Mhm.
right, helps again kind of remind you that, look, this is a person that's got to show up right now. I'm
Mhm.
serious. I'm getting it done. And, you know, when I get it done, then I can go back to being, the other ego state that I want to. But right now,
Yeah.
I'm going to push through, because whatever fear we might be feeling is not real anyway.
Right. Fear, false evidence appearing real.
Yep.
And I always ask people, what do I know to be true? Well, I'm not going to get it anyway. Do you know that to be true? Because if you do, then you might want to rethink your entire career if you know that everything you try is not going to work. And it's
Mhm.
interesting. I caught myself being very distruthful,
Sure, it's a
untruthful,
word. You just said it.
distruthful.
It's true.
Yes. I'm going to get into my I'm always right ego state. It is distruthful. Anyway, I caught myself being sort of mean to myself. I was always saying to people, God, if I just had more time and money, I would have a award-winning speaking. If I just had more time and money. And then COVID hit and I had more time than I knew what to do with and didn't do jack shit. And it's like, wow, I had all the time that I said I needed to get this stuff done. Did I do it? No. So then I have to look at that. Do I really want to do those things? What is the block that's keeping me from doing those things? Is it the ego state that's like, woohoo, going to the beach with a boyfriend? Or is it the, it's not going to work anyway, or no one's going to read the book anyway, or why didn't I do these things? Now, some of them I got done, but why didn't I do these things I said I wanted to do? What is that block? And I really have to sit with that. If I truly want to succeed and I want to know myself, which to me is the key to everything, why didn't I do those things? So ask yourself, why aren't you doing those things? Is it the saboteur, or do you not really want to do that thing in the first place? What do you want? Which to me is an important question.
Well, it is, and to push past it, like you said, is it goes back to that. So many of us say, when I have this, then I'll do that, and then I'll be this person, right? And you got to flip that back around, right? I mean, we've talked about that before. You're never going to have those things unless you first be the person, right? So again, that's where we come back to some of the ego states and other stuff, is just show up and pretend, if you have to in the meantime, just be who that person would be to have those things. And then you'll find yourself doing those things that being would do, which of course is going to lead to the having of those things. But it's easy to say. It's very simple. It's easy to say. It's sometimes hard to do the simple things. And that's why you just got to show up each day and fight and be the warrior and kind of push through until we end up having what we want at the end of the day.
And it's interesting, we were talking about ego states, and I know we had Mike on talking about ego states, and you and I have talked about ego states. For those of you listening or watching who are going, what the hell are you guys talking about? Go back and watch one of the ego state ones. It's going to make so much more sense, because it's such a huge part of who we are and what we do. So one of my dominant states is the Capricorn. She's great. She keeps me organized. She keeps me on track. She's how I got my PhD and I've written all the books. And, this is the Capricorn. Very strict, very driven, very organized. Her shadow side is very judgmental, very harsh, no break. It's very nasty. And if I don't get done what I say I'd like to do, she pops in, stupid loser, why didn't you do that thing? She gets very critical. And I was telling my boyfriend Eric that the other day, and I said, I'm starting to feel like crap because I say I want to do all these things and I'm not, and my Capricorn is and he's sitting there and he finally looks at me and he goes, I don't think I like your Capricorn.
She doesn't sound like a nice person.
She makes you not feel good. And I went, yes, in her worst, she makes me not feel good. In her best, she keeps me on task. She keeps me organized. So what I realized is there's this other ego state, my manager, who, if you just give him the list of things to do, he's very gentle and he's very good at saying, hey, why don't we do 3 things today? You don't have to get all 30 done. So I've realized there's this almost sort of subset of Capricorn, which is this very nice, kind of looks like my dad, bald with the glasses, which is very kind and like organized and very little fastidious, kind of nerdy, little, oh my God, it looks just like you.
Nerdy is good. I know, that's what I was going to say.
Fastidious
Bald glasses. Hey, here we go. All right.
No, it's more like my dad. But,
Your dad was much funnier than me.
Oh, my dad was hilarious. Smiling and just sort of gentle and wants you to succeed, but doesn't need to be an asshole about it. So it's like, I've realized if I can give this stuff over to my manager, stuff gets done and I'm not driving myself crazy. I still have time to go to the beach. So it's the saboteurs are sometimes just ourselves. It's just this other part of our ego state being too mean to us. Do you have a manager or a Capricorn? Do you have a Capricorn in you, Jason?
Well, I have. I'm not a Capricorn. I'm a Leo, right? But
this is where the name of the show came from.
I know, but I do have some of that where, because especially like we've been talking, this month for me is very busy, and so when I get that way, I have a big list, right? Over here of all the stuff that I'm supposed to do, and say, and a lot of times in the course of a day, I maybe had 10 things on my list and I get one done. Now I was serving people all day. I was doing what I needed to do. It was stuff that had to get done. But then I will get sometimes hard on myself, just like your shadow side Capricorn, to say, oh, come on, Jason, you said you were going to get all this stuff done. You didn't get it all done. You're not keeping your word. What's the matter, right? And so it's trying to, again, have that self-compassion, realizing that, look, probably half the things on my list I should just turn over to somebody on my team, but I'm still holding on to it for some stupid reason, right? That I have to let go of, and actually allow them to do more. That's where some of my control stuff kind of comes in, in that way, that I just need to release more and realized again. I mean, Allie last night said, you're letting your business drive you again. And I went, oh shit. Yep, honey, you're right. I am working more and doing more of the stuff because I feel this pressure to get it done.
Yeah.
And the challenge of it, where again, I have to choose what's most important, what only I can do, and try to delegate the rest of it, and just realize that it's going to be what it is.
Yeah. I want to point out something so important in what you just said. When we are in a relationship, when we are in a team, when we are in a couple, and somebody sees you working too hard, or if you're the one listening to this where your spouse is the type A, where the business is driving them again, figure out the gentlest, healthiest way to say that to them. Because if you just go, you're working too much again, they're not going to hear you. If you come at me and say, you're a crazy workaholic again, what are you doing? I'm going to be like, screw you. Because my Capricorn's like, no, whatever. Eric said the exact same thing to me the other day. He pointed out in the most gentle way, he goes, you had mentioned that you didn't want to be the way you were before. You didn't want to be working as much. You didn't want to be seeing many clients. He goes, and I know things are weird with COVID, but I see you kind of doing it again. And I just want to question that because I don't know if that's what you want to be doing right now. And if it is, that's fine. But you said you didn't want to, and now I see you doing it again. And I was like, oh my God, what a perfect way to say that. Just the same thing what Allie did to you. Yeah. Just that reminder of, you're doing that thing you said you didn't want to do.
Well, and what was funny is, there was, I can't remember if it was the same day, but it was a day this week too, where I could tell that she was kind of looking at me like something's off with me, right? And so later in the day, she says, are you annoyed at me? And I'm like, no, I'm not annoyed at you. Well, you kind of seem like you're annoyed. And so again, right, she kind of brought that up to me. And so I sat with that for a little while, and I'm like, oh, I probably am annoyed. I'm not annoyed at her.
Right.
I'm annoyed at myself because I wasn't getting some of the stuff done that I wanted to. And I was slipping back right, into that old way. And again, the gentleness of a partner, a friend, being able to bring something that like that up to us, because again, we got to just look in the mirror and realize, I mean, we started off talking about saboteurs and obstacles, right? A lot of times those come from ourselves.
Yeah.
And we're our own worst enemy. And it's a journey, right? I mean, we know this, we've been living this for years, but it still creeps in for us. It creeps in for everybody at different times in your life. The issue is the more you practice, the more you do it, the easier it is to get out of it, right? Instead of it being like a 3-week funk, it's like a 3-minute funk, like, oh shit, okay, I just recognize that. Well, I'm going to stop it. I'm going to change. I'm going to move forward.
Right. And that takes awareness, and that takes knowing who you are, it takes knowing what you want. This is why I love mapping the ego states. I can tell you pretty much all the time who's in charge, who's driving my bus. And it's so great to have a gentle partner who can say, oh, you're doing that thing you said you didn't want to do. This is what an accountability partner is for. And if you're not in a relationship, have a coach. Have a, I just finished up my coaching hours, and I saw a bunch of clients, just a one-shot free session. And at the end of every single session, I said, what do you need from me now? Do you need me to call you and check in? I'll do it once. I'm not going to bug you every day to do that thing. That's not my job. But do you want me to check in a week and see if you did that thing you just said you wanted to do? And every single person went, yeah, I would love that. And every single person, except one, did what they said they were going to do. And she goes, oh my God, how did a week go by already? Thank you so much for reminding me that I need to do that. Now, good. I'm done with that. It's like, I'm not going to check in again with her unless she asks me to, but it's like, do we have that inner check-in person or an outer check-in person around us that can hold us accountable and keep us healthy? Because sometimes we do get a little off the rails. I know I do.
Mm-hmm. So when you're off the rails, I think we had an episode on that earlier. When you fall off the wagon, get back on, right? So that's one of the lessons of life. So
it is. Oh, this is lovely. Saboteurs. Yep. Name it, identify it, see what you can do to get rid of it, do a workaround, surround yourself by people that love you and support you and can keep you accountable to things.
Yeah. And then just make a choice, move into that other ego state that you need to, and move past it, because you do have way more control over the conditions that are going on in your life and how you choose to respond than most of us realize.
Yep.
So just make the choice, move on.
Exactly. I love it. Yep. Move the choice and move on. All right. Lovely. All right. I'm Kathy Gruver. I can be reached at kathygruver.com.
And I'm Jason Mefford. I can be reached at jasonmefford.com. Go out. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. See ya.